but I'm not a big fan of my own art.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of singer-songwriters are like that. Like I saw Sting get inducted into the Kennedy Center Honors.
Okay.
And I saw him interviewed, and he's always very scowly. Even though this album was great, he's already thinking about the next album.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 186 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with an artist and musician. Please welcome Johnny Hinchman. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview local business owners, comedians, singers, and more. I dive into their backstory to find out how they got where they are, what are some of the tips for you to do the same, and find out where they are going. Tune in every week as I interview more of the people you see every day. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Hope you guys are having a good week. We just got done with Kids Fest over this last weekend, Camano Kids Fest. So if you haven't ever come to that, we do it every year. It's our annual event. It's a free kids event, and we at the Marketplace do a tie-dye shirt. And so we've changed it up this year for the first time in a long time for a new design. And so every year we're going to try and do a new design now for our tie-dye shirt. So every year it's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, we're super excited. Had a great showing. Ran out of T-shirts again. No matter how many I order, we always seem to run out. So, but yeah, it was a good time. Had a fun time with the shirts. Seemed like everyone had a good time there. So thanks for a good showing there. As we look ahead, we've got a movie on the lawn coming up on August 12th here in the complex. That one is actually going to be Raya and the Last Dragon, so be sure to come out for that. There's going to be popcorn provided by Les Schwab, and then we'll have candy for sale, and those sales of candy go to support different events here at the Commons. So besides that, the big thing we have coming up here is Cider Fest. So it's called Camano Cider Fest. It's our first annual event, and we're really excited about this new event that we're going to be putting on. Emily, who's been working with me for a couple years now, this has been her little baby that she's brought it up from, idea all the way to here. And we're really excited to be able to actually put this event on. And so there's two different windows you can buy tickets for. If you go to CamanoCiderFest.com, you can sign up there. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. We've got, I think, 7 or 8 cideries signed up so far. We're hoping to get a few more. And you get to show up, try a bunch of different ciders. We're going to have merch for sale. It's going to be a good time. So again, that is on September 2nd. I think I said August 2nd. That is September 2nd. September 2nd, that is Labor Day weekend. So there's going to be a lot of people in town. So it's going to be a good time, big party. We're really excited for that. So mark your calendars for September 2nd. Not October, not August, September. All right, let me get into this episode. So I got to interview Johnny Hinchman, who is a member of, was a member of the Late First Sky, Jackson Browne tribute band, and great conversation with him. Really kind of hearing that background of people who end up going to be a musician, and having the highs and the lows. It's your job is never done. You're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the product, you're everything. And so he had some cool experiences. He had some times that he got to do some really cool things that we get to talk about. But it's great hearing his perspective on things, how his life and journey has kind of continued on, and how music has just been infused in that. How he's continued to do that. And he moved up here from California. So being a transplant now on Camano and getting involved in the music scene here. So I think it's a great window into the life of a musician, whether you're full-time or whether you're a musician with a day job, as we talk about in this podcast, gives you perspective. But, it just, again, reminds you can do what you love. You can keep going with it. And he's continued to do that. So he's actually going to be performing here in the complex, I believe on August 19th. We have a summer market, not harvest market, just summer market that is going to be being put on also by Emily. Has organized all that. But yeah, so we've got that market coming up, and she's going to be playing for part of that market. So you can check out his music. We've also have links to all of his stuff in the show notes below. But yeah, without further ado, here's my conversation with Johnny Hinchman. Hey, alieners, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with an artist and musician. Welcome to the podcast, Johnny Hinchman.
Thanks, everybody. Good to be on the island.
Yeah.
Living on the island.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. And
Thanks for having me.
What was that?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Actually, very touched you reached out to have me on and tell my story. And
yeah. Well, and also you being kind of newer to the island, so it's always fun to get intros of the people coming on the island. And
boy, for artist, musician to get their voice out there, that's huge.
Yeah.
Being heard is the hardest thing ever for a musician.
Right. All right. So before we jump in, tell us a little bit about Johnny.
Well, born and raised Sacramento, California. I'm the fourth boy, the youngest of four. Pretty much lived in that area my whole life, except for the last 25 years or so, I kind of moved up the hill towards Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
Had to get out of town, but town always reaches back when you're going to play music or something. You got to be where the people are. And,
right.
And all my friends, which
Yeah.
I'll mention all of you one by one.
Very cool.
Grew up in California.
Yeah.
And so the sob story of musicians, the pandemic hit, and I was canceled for over 2 years straight.
Whew. You didn't even do anything wrong for that one.
Yeah, exactly. And so, after going through the second year, kind of had to start reevaluating, what's going to be after the pandemic? Will there still be music? A lot of musicians that I know didn't come back after the pandemic, So we came up to Seattle in 2018 to see Pearl Jam.
Okay.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And as we're landing at SeaTac and looking out the window, I'm going, oh my God, it's so beautiful here. And I'm from Lake Tahoe. This is a lot like Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
I'm not from Lake Tahoe, but I lived near Tahoe, and that was my hangout. And this is a lot like Tahoe. And so it really opened our minds up to expanding and moving up here. It's really hot in California.
Yeah, a little bit.
Enjoy the heat, my friends.
Very cool. So you grew up in Sacramento. Where did you get started in music? Or when?
Well, here's my big story. I tell it a lot of my gigs. It was fourth grade, and we were having a Christmas play. And this little curly-haired kid opened up the play. He was playing like honky-tonk piano. And I was like, wow. I became friends with him. And I went and bought a guitar. And we started playing together in fifth grade when we were 10.
Nice.
It was a Catholic school.
Okay.
The same 25 kids that just moved next door to second grade, third grade. So whenever I see any of those people after all these years, we're like family, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, this little kid was playing piano and had to hook up with him, and I bought a guitar, and I started learning guitar from the Eagles bass player's dad.
Wow.
Timothy B. Schmidt's dad. He was from Sacramento.
Okay.
And they lived not far from us. And longer story longer, we're still playing together. That's Larry Audino, my brother in music. We've been playing together 52 years now.
Wow. Very
since
cool.
Fifth grade.
Awesome.
When we were 10. So that was my start. And then we played together through high school in bands. And later on, I was in a duo with my brother, and we went overseas, played for the troops during the Desert Storm War.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I got going.
Yeah. So what was that like, going over there and performing for the troops?
That absolutely changed my life. I'll never forget. Well, we played me and my brother Jim, We were called the Hinchmen, a play on my last name, Hinchman. And we have kind of identical singing voices, so we were a real harmony group.
Okay.
So it was 91 when we went over there, and the movie Ghost was a big hit, and Unchained Melody from the Everly Brothers was a hit again when that movie came out. And so we were playing those songs, and we were playing at a little lounge in Sacramento, and there was a gal, Pam Dingate, came in. She's an entertainment agent. She came up to us and said, "How would you guys like to go overseas and play for the troops?" And we're like, "Well, where do we sign?" Right? And next thing you know, we had our papers in hands and getting shots. And we went all over the Pacific during the war and played for all the troops that were going to or coming back from the Gulf.
Yeah.
Most appreciative audience I've ever played for. So we
Yeah.
flew over there. We started with a month in Korea, went to Japan, Philippines, Guam, all these little Navy and military installations all over the Pacific.
Wow.
And we'd say, "Hey, we're the Hinchmen from Sacramento, California." "Dude, I'm from San Diego," because that's close to home when you're that far away, right?
Right.
And I'll never forget flying home from that tour, looking out the window, heading into the darkness back towards the States, thinking, and I was 30, I was thinking, what am I going to do now? How am I going to top that? I've always been a guy that's kind of goal-oriented.
Yep.
Am I going to make a record now, or I got to take it to the next level, right?
Yep.
So I got home and I quit my job and I went back to school and got my music degree,
Okay.
which taught me a lot about theory, which taught me how to write songs.
Okay.
And then the next goal was to be a signed artist and go tour around the world, which didn't actually happen, but we'll talk about all my trying,
Yeah.
for the next 30 years.
Yeah. So, you were saying you got started in 4th grade with music. Up until that point, and then as you were getting into it, were there certain musicians or guitarists that were influential in kind of you deciding what type of style you wanted to play?
Yeah, when I was that age and growing up, I was really into the acoustic music. So Led Zeppelin and bands like that didn't really do anything for me. I was really more into the Eagles in America and Loggins and Messina, Jackson Browne.
Okay.
I really wanted to be Kenny Loggins. I really wanted to be Jackson Browne. And then, wow, full circle, all these years later, I have a Jackson Browne tribute band. And I got to go out and be Jackson Browne.
Very cool.
Yeah. Sort of like that.
Yeah. Kind of just like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then, during your time, did you also mentioned that you were taught guitar by one of the bass players from the Eagles' dad. Did you ever meet the Eagles then?
I didn't get to meet the Eagles, although I did get to meet Tim a couple times. When I was taking lessons from Tim's dad, Tim was in a group called Poco.
Okay.
Poco came after the Buffalo Springfield.
Okay.
Brandon, you remember them, right? Buffalo Springfield had Neil Young and Stephen Stills. And
Okay.
then when they broke up, they formed different bands, one being Poco.
Got it.
And Tim was in Poco when I was taking lessons from his dad. After that, Tim became a member of the Eagles. But I got to meet him 2 or 3 times, usually just out in public.
Okay.
But super nice guy.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan.
Very cool.
Yeah, so check out Poco. If you guys are Eagles fans, check out Poco, because Poco is a lot like the Eagles, and a lot of people haven't heard of them. Or definitely check out Poco.
Okay. Awesome. Of the musicians and stuff that you have followed through present and in the past, if there was any musician that you could meet, dead or alive, who would that be, and what would you ask them?
Well, I tell people, you can put on my tombstone that I think the best songwriter of all time was Paul McCartney.
Yes. Yeah.
I won't say the Beatles are my absolute favorite band, my number one, but Paul McCartney was a songwriting machine. He dreamt a lot, like yesterday, he dreamt that song.
Okay.
So he woke up and it was in his head, and he grabbed his little recorder and laid it down so he wouldn't forget. And after seeing all these Beatles and the new videos and just the way that he's a song machine. He's written more songs that are popular, I think, probably than anybody. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what I would ask him, because how do you come up with these songs? He's going to tell you he dreams them. I know the answer, but I envy him probably the most as far as music goes. And,
Yeah.
And he's still alive.
Yes. Yeah. Then, so you were in high school and you were still playing music and everything. You mentioned that after Desert Storm, after you did that tour, you quit your job and you went for your music degree. But prior to that, what were you doing then? What did you do after high school and stuff?
Well, I was always a musician that had a day job. Mm-hmm. A lot of mothers will come up to me and say, "My son plays guitar. Any advice for him?" Or, I say, "Don't quit your day job," because music gear is not cheap,
Right.
and you got to have a way to pay the bills.
Traveling's not cheap if you're playing out of town or
Yeah,
other
and
places.
now like just an acoustic guitar, a pretty good one's a couple $1,000. Back in the day, you can get a
Yikes.
good guitar for $200-300.
Right.
But if you want to plug it in, and so I don't know if I answered your question.
But what I guess what were you? Did you just start doing a day job, or was there something else you were kind of thinking you were going to get into as a career?
Well, it was either going to be a professional baseball player. Mm-hmm. So I did play some college JC ball.
Okay.
And did get a tryout with the Reds one day.
Okay.
So they hit me like 10 fly balls, and I got to pitch like 10 pitches. Next, you're a one of a million.
Yep.
And my phone wasn't ringing. But I still played music, and I was always doing some type of music show somewhere.
Yeah.
And just always stuck with it,
Yeah.
It kind of became it's what I do. Mm-hmm. People tell me, "You're so lucky to do what you love. You play music," and well, it's not a job, but it's what I do. It's my trade.
Yeah.
So I've got that right brain gene, and just stuck with it, but always had a day job to support myself.
Yeah. So what changed when you came back from that tour? You went and got your music degree. Where were you at mentally? How did you hit the ground after that?
I learned a lot of music theory from school, which taught me how to write songs, where to go and what keys, and in college music, it's all classical. Mm-hmm. So that was really hard for me because I'm a pop music guy. And so 5 semesters of theory, and a lot of that was Bach and Brahms, and oh my goodness, I didn't know any of that material, but got to meet a lot of fellow students, and I got musically involved with them and music projects with them, and so any town you're in, there's a music scene.
Yeah.
And you'll get to know everybody at the local club and all the other bands, and just networking. I tended to be always in a band. Usually it was my band, though.
Okay.
I'm kind of that way. I was the captain of the baseball team and president of my grade school and kind of a leader guy. And so I would write songs and gather a band around me. In high school, I went to go see Jackson Browne at the big auditorium in Sacramento.
Very
and
cool.
I had like third row, and he walked out, and he had me hook, line, and sinker. And so singer-songwriters that have a band, James Taylor, that really got my goat, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So if I can write the songs and not depend on somebody else.
Yeah.
So I always had a band assembled, which musicians know that's really hard to keep a band together.
Yeah.
So a lot of years of writing songs and playing around town and waiting for the big producer from LA to come knocking, and he didn't. So I'm on Camano now.
So then, during that time, were you still just working a day job and then performing around?
Yep, always doing the day job. And in my area, there were a ton of clubs and places to play.
Yeah.
So always kept busy.
Yeah. Awesome. And are those, for someone who's not familiar on that side, are those typically you're putting your name into a lottery, or you're signing up, or or are they reaching out to you guys?
You've got to knock on doors.
Okay.
That's really the hardest part about music is
Yeah.
having that bio package, that demo package, and recordings, and now it's videos and technology, and I refer to people like there used to be a show on VH1 called Behind the Music.
Mm-hmm.
And this week it's Motley Crue, and this week it's Poison, or whatever the band.
Yeah.
And there was a common theme that all these bands in Michigan or whatever, they got in the van and they moved to LA.
Yeah.
And they made it.
Yeah.
And, it really takes a big effort from a musician. If you want to make it, don't expect someone to come knocking.
Yeah.
But get popular in your local scene, and if the club's full when you play, hopefully someone else will hear your songs and see that you're popular. And
Yeah. Well, and it's that consistency of the day in, day out. I mean, I know there's the story about the Beatles and how they just played at that overnight.
Yeah, they went to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another example of they left home.
Yep.
And I don't know if they got really discovered in Germany, but by the time they got back, they were really on top of their game.
Yeah.
I found that when I did my tour with my brother, and we would play minimum 6 days a week, a different base, military base, every day. And boy, when we got home, we were really good.
Yeah, it's that repetition and that practice, and
it just becomes reflex.
Yeah, but it's intentional practice as well. When you're, they talk about from a sports side, it's like you can practice on the training field, but then like in a game, it's different. There's pressures, there's different things. So when you're playing in front of someone for 6 nights a week, that's different than playing 6 nights in your house 6 nights a week.
Oh, absolutely. I consider myself a singer more than a guitar player.
Yeah.
I played guitar 50 years, 52 years. Right, Larry? I do play piano too. But singing, to prepare for a show, I go in my studio and I sing 3 hours a day.
Okay.
Because when you're going to sing, you can go in your studio and practice at 100%. But when you go to a show, you're going to sing at 110.
Yeah.
You're going to go for that other note.
Yeah.
And then you'll be a little, not strained, but so if you got a show the next day, you got to be in shape. It's about being in shape.
Yeah.
And that means working out and staying in shape. Music's a physical thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's whereas all the different muscles of every part of your body, they still kind of all work the same in the sense of like if you've got to stretch them, you got to exercise them, you got to keep them in shape, and otherwise that goes away. And then you do one thing wrong and it screws it all up.
Well, and it's amazing, and so I really envy when I see really great singers. It's a very physical thing, and the calories you burn at one show, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll drink pitchers of water at a show.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, especially because it's also like, it's almost like hot yoga mixed with like, HIIT workout with like
it's a lot of
and you have to be singing that whole time.
a lot of mental stuff because you're trying to remember the chords and the words, and I'm kind of addicted to lyrics. I have a huge binder of lyrics.
Okay.
And so when I play a show, I never have a music stand or an iPod or something that's scrolling lyrics. I kind of take pride in knowing the lyrics.
Yeah.
And I play some pretty long songs too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Is there something that you've always just kind of had as far as memory and stuff? Like once you're in the flow, you just remember all the song lyrics, or?
I just kind of got addicted to the art of remembering the lyrics, because when you're singing a song in front of a big crowd, you've got to be thinking a couple sentences ahead. Even on your guitar, you've got to, but once you get through it, I kind of go to my visual of my songbook in my head when I'm staring at the crowd.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the second page in the second verse, and it begins with this word, and there's an art to that. And I kind of got addicted to that.
Nice. Very cool. So I know you played a solo show this month in July, but you've also recently played with Late for the Sky, which is a Jackson Browne tribute band.
Yes.
Do you prefer being a solo show or being part of an ensemble?
Well, bands are hard to hold together. I'm kind of a guy that likes to depend on myself only.
Yeah.
I would tend to say solo. However, my duo partner, Larry Audino, nothing's better than playing with him. We read each other after all these years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
We know where we're going next.
Yeah.
Even if I make a mistake or if he makes a mistake, we know where we make our own mistakes. So he's got my back. So to have somebody that's got your back. So I would say probably as a duo, because, I had my own band. After I got back from my tour, I went on as the Hinchman without my brother.
Okay.
And I was writing songs now, and I was doing a local CD, and I had my own band. But then the bass player quits, so I need a new bass player. And then by the time we get him broken in, the guitar player joined a different band. And so that's all just really hard. You're missing a lot of time out there playing. Solo's good.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is you not only that, but you also have the drama side of that, of different bands have drama,
You said it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and that just takes a lot of mental fortitude of I'm trying not to hold a grudge against this person because I understand why they did this, but it's personal because you're like, I thought we were a team.
Well, and back in my day, there used to be a bulletin board at the music store looking for a guitar player, looking for a drummer, and I met a lot of people that way.
Yeah.
But you're still bringing a stranger into a band. You don't know anything about these people.
Yeah.
I went and saw Toto recently at the Snohomish Casino. I'm a big fan of Toto, and Steve Lukather is the guitar player in Toto. He's one of the best, and I saw an interview with him recently, and he was saying, I think this is the 15th rendition of Toto, and he was saying, I've had a lot of guys in the band that we're not friends. It's strictly business. And I've been there too, you know. So when it comes to someone leaving the band, there's no reeling them back. They've got their mind made up. So back to depending on yourself, being solo is, especially if you wrote the songs.
Right.
And that's what I like about the singer-songwriters like Jackson Browne and James Taylor. They can have a big band and it sounds great, but they can go do that show all by themselves with that guitar they wrote that song on.
Yeah.
Or that piano.
Yeah.
And make it work, because that's where it was written.
Right.
So that's a true artist. To me.
Yeah. Very cool. And I think that other piece too, I've seen that in, there's the benefit of the team or a band or whatever. But it's, like you said, there's that reliancy in things. And when you've got any sort of wild card in there that it's not in your control, then it's, it makes it a lot harder.
Well, I will have to say too, I've written songs and then brought them to the band, and you've got to give them their input.
Right.
And when all is said and done and we've reworked the song with their ideas and we go and record a CD or something, when I look back, their input really did make the song better. I'm also an artist. I'm a pyrographer. I wood burn.
Okay.
So I took my wood burning pen from Scouts and I took it to a new level where I do portraits. And, but I'm not a big fan of my own art.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of singer-songwriters are like that. Like I saw Sting get inducted into the Kennedy Center Honors.
Okay.
And I saw him interviewed, and he's always very scowly. Even though this album was great, he's already thinking about the next album.
Yeah.
And he's an artist. And,
Yeah.
and so, as an artist, I would do art shows and people would rave about my art. And I did really well with my art and I sold all my art. And I did really well with my songs and stuff too, but I don't want to hear my own voice.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a big fan of my own art because I'm always thinking the next thing I do will be better.
Yeah.
So why look
Absolutely.
down at, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of artists are that way. Just,
Yeah.
Even when you hear your own podcast, isn't it weird to hear?
Yeah, I don't
Your
listen to the whole thing.
voice.
I used to. This is the back room stuff. But like, I used to listen to the whole podcast all the way through and write these really detailed notes throughout the whole thing, so there'd be good show notes. And I stopped doing that, and I really just kind of skimmed through the podcast to find a clip for my opener. And then I'd take notes during the podcast to say, oh, I need a link to this. Oh, I need to put this in the show notes. And that way, I don't have to re-listen to it again. Not that it's bad or anything, but I'm like, I already lived it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm already got the next podcast scheduled.
Right. Well, when you record, when you're singing, and you hear yourself,
Yeah.
oh my God, no one likes to hear their own voice.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn how to manipulate it in a way that is friendly or what it,
Yeah.
But you know what? It's great. It's great to critique yourself. You
Oh,
become
yeah.
you become better.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people recently ask me. They'll say, "Wow, as a singer, you're kind of like at the top of your game, but it's not really my ability. It's knowing in my head from experience what not to sing and how to have dynamics, sing softer and then sing louder, know what not to do
Yeah,
in
yeah.
public." And so a lot of wisdom comes in after years of singing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's always this is probably where when you get into that whole practice and skills and things like that of growing. This is something I'm learning in some of other things. I play video games, stuff like that. So, and I like competitive ones. And like when you're learning, when I listen to like coaches talk, they will say like, go back and watch your old games. And then you have to see, okay, I see I did this,
Absolutely.
10
Oh, my
times.
goodness.
Don't do that anymore. Or
Yeah.
like these different things. And then you have to practice the technical side. So like in instruments, stuff like that. Like when I was practicing guitar, I was like, I can't do bar chords. So I need to just sit there and go bar, off, bar, like over and over.
Uh-huh.
And eventually you get to the point where you're like, I can kind of play it. And then you start bringing it into your practice and you try playing with it. And then you go back to the drawing board and you're like, okay, no, I need to practice a little more. But it's the practicing well and not just, if I just play for 10,000, that whole 10,000 hour things. If I just play for 10,000 hours, it'll be better. Yes and no. You've got to be, focused on it too.
Well, I'm a big advocate of little recorders.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got this little recorder. It's like 8 inches long, and it's got these 2 little mics on the front of it, like the size of a quarter.
Okay.
Right? And I set it in front of myself with the headphones on, and it sounds like I'm in $1 million studio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to plug in or anything. I just set it right on the desk in front of me. And listening back to yourself is really great practice.
Yeah.
And when you see videos of yourself, you learn what not to do on stage. Like for musicians, a big no-no for musicians,
Yeah.
don't look at each other. When you see a band up on a stage and they're all looking to the middle, to the singer,
Right.
or you see a band where they're not looking at each other at all, that shows confidence.
Yep.
And yeah, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
But you learn that when you watch a video of yourself play,
Right. Well, and now we live in this age where we were talking about technology and stuff like that, where when you shoot like a video sing-along or like a music video, but like a more relaxed version of it, like you do see a lot more of them looking at each other because it's like part of the video. But yeah, when you're on stage, you don't have a central camera that you're focusing on. You're focusing on the outside, the crowd.
Right, yeah.
So it's different. They feel the same, though, because you're recording and you're all playing the song and you're in this kind of hyped environment.
Yeah.
But it's very different. You got to
Yeah.
distinguish.
Yeah, if you're 5 guys in a band going out in front of a big crowd, you've got to look them in the eye. Don't look at each other. You looked at each other in all those rehearsals.
Right.
So, yeah. looking at yourself in video, you learn a lot.
Yeah, that's very cool. So when you started getting into music writing, you said that kind of built as you were going through your music degree and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What were things that kind of, I guess, do you have like a creative process you go through when you write songs?
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day, for years and years and years, I would sit, I do play piano.
Mm-hmm.
I call that my second instrument. But I'm kind of like that singer-songwriter. I can play the chords and accompany myself and write a melody and a song and perform it,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of hours just sitting at a piano, banging out a melody, and have your recorder ready when that idea comes, just to get it on some type of
Right.
digital. But it's a lot of late nights just trying to come up with another idea and another melody. And I'm kind of the one, I come up with a melody first.
Okay.
And then I'll apply the lyrics.
Yeah.
Although I've written, here's a little story. A guy walked into our local music store in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, I'm a wannabe poet, and I've got this huge binder of poems. Do you know anybody that would write music to my poems? Well, he called me, and I hooked up with this guy, and I ended up writing like 6 songs. And then he would, once I wrote the song, he would call the studio, the big studio, and pay for me to go record the song for him.
Okay.
Right? But the easy part is I could open up his binder, and there's a poem called The Bird or whatever, and gave me a whole concept to write towards.
Right.
I didn't have to think of something to write about. So
Right.
then I could create a melody about a bird.
Yeah,
Or what.
yeah.
It kind of, to be given that really helps a lot, you
Yeah.
know? And I wasn't writing for myself at that point.
Yeah.
And then I was in a really great band called Rogue in Sacramento. Great singer, Randy Scholes, best singer in the whole Sacramento area. And when I was in that band, I could write a song based on his voice.
Okay.
He sounded a lot like the guy in Bad Company,
Okay.
Paul Rogers. And so I could come up with an idea for him to sing. And that was a lot easier to write that way instead of something for myself
Yeah.
that I've got to come up with the melody and a concept and
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that always stands out to me when you're looking at music or writing or any of this stuff is how do you block out all of the other melodies that get stuck in your head and you're like, oh, this sounds really cool.
Oh,
and then,
my
3
God.
minutes later, you're like, that's why it's cool. It sounds like this song.
Right.
How do you kind of deal with that?
Well, everybody I've ever known that writes songs, you're going to hear their influences in those songs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my critique on newer music.
Yeah.
That it's all been done.
Yes.
Now the Beatles and the Beach Boys and those guys, they were kind of groundbreaking. And I'm waiting for that next groundbreaking band. But everybody that I know that writes songs, you're going to hear their influences in their songs. And that's normal.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Right. Yeah. I think what's hard is like, there's the influence, which I understand that side, but like literally hearing the because they write them to be catchy. They write the melodies to be catchy. So like you're humming along and you're like, this sounds really cool. I like how this is. And then again, and this obviously happens, right? We see this in like big bands. Sometimes they're like, hey, they stole this from this band.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know, but my guess is it probably wasn't intentional. They're sitting there, they're like, this is a great tune. We're going to do this. Not realizing I was walking to a grocery store and heard this in the background and that's where it came from, right?
Right. Well, I tell people in music there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can learn those chords, and how many millions of songs have been written
Yeah.
in history, and they're all A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Right.
And so the new song hit that just came out has A and G and D in it.
Yeah.
It's just to create another melody over those same musical chords.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a tribute to humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's so human.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about music. the thing that really grabbed me about music and made me want to do music would be, you know, you go to a rock concert and they come out rocking the first couple songs, and then the third song is like a ballad.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, my eyes are all tearing up and goosebumps. And to move someone like that emotionally,
Right.
that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was lucky enough when I was in the band Rogue, we did 2 CDs, and our hometown heroes in Sacramento was a band called Tesla.
Okay.
Tesla was really big in the 80s, and they're still out doing it. And the guitar player, Frank Hannon, which I'll go on record saying, one of the best in the world. Frank Hannon of Tesla is incredible guitar player. Anyway, he produced our 2 CDs. So we got to go to their studio, and he'd open up his guitar vault and say, oh, on this song, why don't you use this guitar? He had them all, right?
Wow.
And learned a lot from him that way.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Brain fart.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. Well, that's, yeah, all of those pieces are really cool because I think as you're going through that process, it's just, there's so much to think about. We, it's always funny when I'm listening to certain songs and you do pick up those other tones or sometimes you get enough of a string of a melody where you're like, oh, that's from that song. Or you're like, that sounds like a song from something else.
Right. And you know, it's amazing. All the music you don't know.
Yeah.
You might have written the same song and just never heard it even.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because we're human.
Well, not just that, the brain is so fascinating, but it captures, music is such a weird thing because the way the brain processes music and deals with it is not like speech and not like picture. It's its own thing. So your brain will capture certain melodies or songs or things. Like I said, you could be walking to a grocery store, hearing a song that you don't actually know, like if someone asked you on the street, but your brain has archived that data.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I'll be at Home Depot and there's a song subliminally playing, and by the time I'm back in my car, I'm humming that song. So yeah, it does stick with you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you will sound like your influences.
Yeah. So, when you started performing and stuff like that, did you ever experience stage fright?
Oh, I still do.
Okay.
Oh. And really, the only way to get over that is confidence. Just be well rehearsed, you know. No, the shot of whiskey doesn't really help. And, you know, especially if you're a singer and you got to remember a lot of words and stuff, you don't want anything really although the 70s artists will tell you differently, right? The psychedelic era and stuff. But, yeah, for me, I got to be clear-minded. But stage fright, it's every time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, cool little story. So I just played at Dusty Cellars here on the island.
Shout out to Dusty Cellars, too.
And, oh, absolutely. Ryan and Dusty, love you guys. Thanks for having me. And I'll be back there September 2nd, by the way.
Awesome.
For the last show I did a couple weekends ago, my good buddy Larry Adina flew up from California and played with me.
I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That was incredible. And what was really cool, too, is I'm new to the island. I moved 1,000 miles away, left all my family and friends and band, my music bands and stuff, and moved into a really small neighborhood here on the island. But I've gotten to know the whole neighborhood. And at Dusty Cellars, they were all there.
Oh, very
So
cool.
talk about being nervous. They all knew I played, but they'd never heard me.
Okay.
So they're all staring at me from note one.
We're ready.
So that was, stage fright still happens even out on the island.
Yeah. Very cool. I was going to ask you about that, though. So Larry is still down in California, but he's come up. Was that his first time up here then?
No, he's actually been up a couple times just to visit and check it out. But when he was up in April, we celebrate we have the same birthdays even in April.
Oh, very cool.
We're a couple days apart, but we celebrate together. And,
okay.
I was telling him I've got this date at the winery. You're welcome if you can use. I've got the gear too here. You can just come up and use my gear. And he is just the best person ever. And he's like, I'm in. So he actually brought one of his keyboards up, flew 1,000 miles.
Wow, that must be fun going through all the things.
Oh my God.
The keyboard.
What a magical day. So I'm with my best buddy at Dusty Cellars with my whole neighborhood there.
Yeah.
It was another magical moment.
Nice. That's very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked a little bit about this before, but for people that are looking to get into music, and we talked about how you were saying the musicians that have made it, so many of them, they picked up, left, and went. But there's a lot of stories of musicians that picked up, left, and went, and eventually came back, or are now on the streets of somewhere. What would you say to someone that is looking to become a musician and really get into that? What type of advice would you give them?
Well, from 30 years ago when I was really trying to be the rock star, things have changed. Mm-hmm. So now everything's on a cloud. And not CDs, albums, it's all bought online.
Yeah.
Downloaded songs. Mm-hmm. And so I think the industry's changed so much that that wasn't when I was trying to do all that. It was about getting a demo in front of a A&R guy at a record company. Now, I don't even have any songs out there to be downloaded. Actually, I think there are from my band Rogue.
Okay.
So if you look up Rogue,
Yeah.
from Sacramento, Rogue, because a lot of people spell it Rouge. We were called Rouge many times. I think they have songs on some different sites to download.
Okay.
And those are songs I'm on and participated in a lot of the writing, and you'll hear me in those songs. But
okay.
As far as that, but after that, it's changed so much. It's not trying to sell a CD anymore.
Right.
It's all downloaded, and I think that's hurt a lot of musicians. It's probably helped a lot of musicians too, because now you can be heard around the world.
Right.
Right? At a click.
Yep. Yeah, there's always
so I
two
really
sides.
wouldn't know what to tell the young musician.
Yeah.
I'm not super techie.
Yep.
But I think that's the way the direction it's going.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think at this point it's here to stay. And we are really seeing on streaming, though, there's some evolution that hasn't happened yet that I think we are in the process of seeing happen. Both on the music streaming, on the movie streaming. Obviously, there's a big strike going on with SAG and the Writers Guild as well. So, yeah, Screenwriters Guild and the Actors Guild.
Uh-huh.
And it's a lot of it has to do with streaming, because when someone can listen to a song with a click, how do you define that as far as dollars and cents? Because what if someone puts your song on repeat for 20 days, and how does that work? And so, yeah.
I would assume that's kind of like YouTube. I do have YouTube videos out there. If you Google Johnny Hinchman or Odd Man Out, which was my duo with Larry, that's AUDMAN. And on Facebook, you could look at us at Odd Man Out Duo. So YouTube is one way to get yourself out there.
Yep.
But they've got to it's going to come up on somebody's feed, you know, for them to find you.
Right.
Versus, I think, like the cloud downloading, there'll be recommendations on what you listen to, right? Like YouTube.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, is there any equipment or gear that you think is super essential to your process?
Having a little recorder to record your ideas.
Yeah.
So what I do, I've got this little recorder, and like when I play with Larry, and I've got some lead guitar parts, I'll record the rhythm part of the lead part.
Yeah.
And then I can play that over and over back and practice with that.
Yeah.
Even harmonies, vocals. You can buy a little 8-track digital recorder for $200.
Yeah.
And it's like CD quality.
Yeah.
They call it HD quality, but man, for $200, what a tool,
Right.
you know? It's getting that idea also. If you have a great song idea, hit record and just lay it out so
Yeah.
you don't have to try and remember it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and that part is hard too, because it's like, how do I make sure that, how do you make sure that you did it the same way you did the first time over and over?
Exactly.
And then what happens when on the 17th time you play it, you're like, oh, I really like how I did that way this time, which is different than the other 16 times I've done
Right.
it. So,
Well, here's an idea. So I'm a big Jackson Browne fan.
Yeah.
And his music isn't really technically, it's not scorching musicianship, but his writing, he'll have 3 verses in a song. They're all different.
Mm-hmm.
They all end differently or start differently.
yeah.
And so the hard part about his music playing it live is remembering
Does it go up or
the
down?
arrangements.
Yeah.
He's very clever that way.
Yeah.
It's just G, C, and D maybe, but remembering, on the second verse it does this little skip or
Yep.
something.
Yeah.
So having a little recorder, record yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can critique your voice and
Yep. Nice. All right. Well, looking forward, do you have any plans or goals for your music, for kind of getting set up and established here in the Northwest?
Well, so I had my band Late for the Sky at Jackson Browne Tribute Band. I started that in fall of 2019. So by right after the first of the year in 2020, we were ready to go.
Huh.
And so we had a full show. We were booked at amphitheaters and theaters. COVID hit March 1st. And we were canceled for over 2 years.
Yeah.
And we kept the band together. And but after 2 years, there were cracks.
Yeah.
Guitar players moving to Georgia, and I started looking around too, and I fell in love with the Northwest, and I just kind of decided nobody knew what was going to happen to live music,
Yeah.
even if it was going to survive.
Right.
So in the meantime, I had actually bought a lot here on Camano
Okay.
online. I'd never been here.
Wow.
So while I was in the process of purchasing that lot, I told my wife, I can't move somewhere where I've never even stepped on that mud.
Yeah.
So we came up here during COVID, took a COVID flight from hell.
Yeah.
It was peak COVID.
Oh, wow.
And so I wore 2 masks and, hoodie on the plane. And the minute I got up here, I knew this is for me.
Yeah.
Going to do something different, But you can't take the music out of the musicians. So I got here. I've got a great studio set up at my house.
Okay.
And I play all day long, and I'm kind of at the top of my game. Although I will say, it's hard to break into a music scene. If you go 1,000 miles, back home,
Yeah.
I was known a little bit in my music scene. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that hard to find a gig.
Yeah.
You fly 1,000 miles away from that and
Yeah.
try and break into a music scene. And here the music scene isn't, the amount of people
Right.
aren't local like they are where I come from.
Yeah.
So to knock on doors and try to be heard, and a lot of people are set in their ways, and that's the worst part about being a musician is marketing yourself.
Yeah.
Because you got to go and say how great you are, and I'm really not that way. That's when an agent really comes in.
Right.
You don't see, the big bands, they're not talking to a venue. It's an agent or a promoter
Yep.
that's handling all that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're a local musician, you got to go knock on a door, and they're like, yeah, well, get in line, or we're booked for the year. For instance, like this year, I got my studio together, and I kind of snoozed, and about April, I decided I was going to really get serious and knock on doors, and
Yeah.
everybody's booked for the year.
Yeah.
So it's been really hard for me. And then there's Dusty and Ryan. They give me 2 shows on the island, and I'm really happy doing that.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's a lot of people that have retired here to the island.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 50, 60, 40-year-old guys that have come up to me after seeing me play going, oh my God, I retired here and I got a guitar and I really want to play all those songs. How about some lessons, or let's get together and would you play at my house for a party?
Yeah.
That's on the water, or
Yeah.
So that's really worked out great for me. You know,
Yeah.
to meet a lot of people with similar interests, and
Yeah. Nice.
I even had a guy at Dusty Cellars the other day. He thanked me for moving here. God, thanks for moving here, man. We really needed you. It's like, wow, that's a heart warmer.
That's awesome. Very cool. So then, what's next for Johnny Hinchman then? Do you have upcoming shows? I know you mentioned the one at Dusty Cellars in September.
Yep. Unfortunately, Larry's got a gig already down in California. He's not
Okay.
going to make it for that. But, you know, the Late for the Sky Jackson Browne tribute band, my right-hand man in that band was Larry.
Okay, yeah.
And we have developed the Jackson Browne show as a solo. I have developed it as a solo artist. But he's my right-hand man. And
Yeah.
He plays all those piano parts. And we're currently talking to the Lincoln Theater.
Okay.
And
Oh, that'd be great.
we're hoping to do a show there, if not by the end of the year, early in the spring.
Okay.
I've also talked to a promoter who has worked with a lot of the theaters, Mount Baker Theater in Bellingham.
Yeah.
There's a big theater in Everett,
Yep.
which the name will escape me right now, but potentially he might get involved with us and book us doing Jackson Browne shows around the state of Washington.
Cool.
There's only one other Jackson Browne tribute in the country, and that's on the East Coast.
Okay.
So I've got the niche,
Yeah.
if we can get the gigs.
Nice.
Well, I went to a show at the Lincoln Theater, James Taylor
Okay.
tribute show. It was really good.
Nice.
And the Lincoln Theater in Mount Vernon's so nice.
Yes, it's a really cool place.
So seriously considering doing the Lincoln Theater and see if we can get that off the ground.
Nice. Very cool. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
Well, music gear. The only thing under $100 is some strings still.
Yep.
I would say for a little bit over $100.
Yeah.
Pushing $200.
Okay.
Is wireless for your guitar.
Oh,
So
okay.
like when I play at an outdoor venue,
Yeah.
or even indoors, so I've got my guitar wireless, I can walk through the crowd while I'm playing.
Wow.
And that'll develop fans.
Yeah, that's very cool. How is the latency on that? Because I struggle with that with headphones.
Latency's really good. You just got to watch your distance.
Okay.
Yeah. I've wandered too far before and left people in the band stranded. So,
Okay.
But for about, 175, $180, you can get a nice little wireless
That's really cool.
for your guitar.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life?
Wow. Well, outside of my family be hard because obviously my wife Susan is my angel. I would say my next door neighbor my whole life in Sacramento was George Papalius. And George, I could hear out my bedroom window. He was a big Cat Stevens fan.
Okay.
And he played guitar. And he was playing Cat Stevens all day long. And it ends up George is Cat Stevens in a Cat Stevens tribute band.
Okay.
And my last show in California before I moved up here, George actually opened our show.
Oh, cool.
As a matter of fact, if we do the Lincoln Theater, I'm hoping to have him open our show there.
Okay.
But George is the only guy I know that is a solo singer-songwriter tribute artist.
Yeah.
Most of the tribute shows you see, they're a band.
Yeah.
It's Journey or whoever the band is, right?
Yeah.
But not really a singer-songwriter tribute,
Yeah.
Jackson Browne's one, but I don't know of any others until I saw the James Taylor one. But George, being the Cat Stevens,
Yeah.
me and him talk, we joke, every phone call is 2 hours. because we do the same thing.
Yeah.
So we relate to each other on everything from gear, the songs,
Yeah.
and performing, when to breathe on a mic and show emotions and super in-depth music conversations.
Right.
He's a big influence to me. He's
Very
my
cool.
brother.
That's awesome.
Love him.
All right, this is a fill in the blank question. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
Well, I've always wanted to have a number one album. I've always wanted to be a signed artist and on tour.
Yeah.
When I did my the USO type tour, playing for the troops, man! You just to see so many different places, especially overseas, the cultures.
Yep.
Just changes your life.
Yeah.
Gives you different perspectives on life. So at least I got to do that. And that really did change my life.
Yeah.
I vowed to myself that this fall, since I've got my whole studio set up now, I'm going to write a record.
Okay.
So I'm going to have a large series of songs I'll record at my house and maybe take to a studio here. There's a guy locally, I'll give him a plug, Chris Eager.
Okay.
Chris Eager is like, to me, he's the guy here locally.
Yeah.
My neighbors took me to see him when we got here, and I was so impressed. And I'm going to have to hook up with him. He's got a professional studio.
Okay.
I think it's in Mount Vernon. Maybe I'll go do my record with him or a professional studio when I get all my material together.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
And I really want to step out on that theater, that sold out theater with my guitar. I really want to do that.
Yeah.
By myself.
Awesome. That's a great
Yeah.
great goal.
Back to the stage fright.
Yeah. You got this. Who's an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of the Camano Center.
Mm-hmm.
I played there. I volunteered there a couple times, just playing music for an event they have.
Yeah.
Not even singing, just because I want to be a part and meet people.
Yeah.
And I played an event a week or two ago, last week. But Bonnie, the
Yes.
director of the Camano Center, she's amazing.
She is. Absolutely.
She is so in touch with this community in so many ways. And the center, I'm such a fan of the center.
Yeah.
I would say Bonnie.
Yeah.
I mean, she could tell you more things about this community.
Yep.
And I'm all ears. She's just amazing.
Yeah.
The people she knows.
Yep. And what she's done with the center. She took it over. There was a lot of things going wrong, and she turned all of those things around, and then was the director during COVID, and what a time.
And that place is all about helping people and the help they give people. And I'm going to donate my time there. I'm just going to volunteer. And maybe one day, because they have acoustic Tuesdays and ukulele classes.
Yeah.
And I do have a nice ukulele that's collecting dust. But maybe one day I'll even teach a guitar class there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's those guys I mentioned.
Yep.
Thanks for moving here. I'm 60 years old and I've got a guitar. Maybe one day I'll do something like that there and just donate my time and do some good things.
Nice.
What a great community.
Yeah. Very cool.
Blessed to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very cool community to be part of.
And you're a big part of it.
Yeah.
And the things you
grew
do
up
here, and you're so community oriented, I'm touched to be a part of this even. This is really special.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right. Lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Well, if I only knew how... We used to joke when I was a kid, one day in the future they'll have telephones where you can see the other person. And now everyone's got one in their hip pocket, right?
Uh-huh.
I would say I'm not tech savvy, so computers and apps, and I'm really behind on that. If I knew when I was 20 how, God, just your TV, you're streaming.
Yeah.
Right? I would tell I would be more tech savvy if I could warn myself. Even like my tour I did in '91, playing for the troops.
Yeah.
So we're playing for the USS Nimitz,
Okay.
aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
I don't have any video of that. Oh, it's all memories.
Yeah.
I've got a couple still photos, but it's amazing technology now. Everybody's got a phone.
Yeah.
And recording.
Yeah.
And I used to get offended when I'm playing or I'm doing an art
are you
show.
doing?
Yeah, people walk into my art booth with taking pictures of every single one of my art pieces, and I'd get offended. Or you go to a concert, you can't see because the person in front of you is holding the phone up. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yep.
So I would tell myself to get more be on top of tech.
Yes.
And be savvy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's never too late.
Yeah, really. Exactly.
So, well, thank you so much for joining on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Brandon. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be a part of Camano Island and the community.
Yeah. Well, once again, welcome to the island and welcome to the community.
Hey, if you ever want to track me down too, I haven't set up like a page for my solo music.
Yeah.
But you could go to on Facebook, Late for the Sky, put in Late for the Sky Jackson Browne tribute, and you'll be able to find me. And I'll post my solo stuff there initially. Or you can go to Odd Man Out, AUDMAN Out. That was my duo with Larry.
Okay.
And that is on Facebook. I think it's Odd Man Duo or Odd Man Out Duo. You'll find us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's lots of videos there. And you can write to me there too.
Okay.
Or you could even email me. I call myself the Camano Island guitarist because I had to find a way to market myself here, right? And hopefully people want to hire locally. You could email me at John, John, .jh rustic, rustic @gmail.
All right.
So if you want to hook up and need a guitar player for an event or whatever, you can email me there too.
All right. And of course, we'll have all of this linked in the show notes so you guys can just go down there and explore all of Johnny's music. So,
Awesome.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again so much for joining me on the podcast.
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
All right.
We'll see you at the show.
Yes. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Johnny Hinchman for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, check in the show notes, go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast, and I will talk to you on the next one.